Hi, Richard.
Hey, Kelvin. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
Hi,
Howdy.
Megan.
Got folks jumping on. That's great.
Hello.
Yolanda, how are you?
Good.
Good.
How you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Here we go.
I was able to review the report and the data doesn't lie. Well done. Thank you for all your work on it.
Thank you. Hi, Ayana.
Morning or good afternoon.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you for that, Kalanda. We'll talk about that a lot more. Yeah. Dan, how are you? Jeff, Savon?
Good, good. How are you?
Great. Hi, Savon. You're talking but not talking. I see Jeff down there. It's about 2 minutes after. We'll wait. We'll give just a couple more minutes for folks to jump on. I see Patricia jumping on. Hi, Patricia. I'm hoping that Mona, there's Mona right there. We're just hoping for you, Mona. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. I think we have most folks here. I want to make sure we have plenty of time at this meeting to go over obviously the important report and all the hard work. Let me just start off by saying Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you're off to a healthy new year and hopefully one with some momentum. Hi, Nathan. Good to have you.
Good to see you.
Can I test? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Savon. Yeah.
Sorry.
Can we just go around? We're going to have a few opening comments here, but if we just go around and have everybody introduce themselves, just so we'll have record of who's at the meeting. Again, I'm Richard Sugarman, co-chair. Kelvin.
I'm Kelvin Roldan, co-chair.
Thank you. Kalanda.
Yolanda Mall, Waterbury Promise.
Ayana.
Ayana Encarnacion, Hartford Promise alumni.
Patricia.
Patricia Melton, New Haven Promise.
And Dan.
Dan Chirinci on behalf of Chesla.
Mona.
Mona Lucas, University of Connecticut.
And Mona, you're on here twice now, but that's okay. You have double the votes. Savon.
Savon Hines, President, Hartford Promise.
And Nathan.
Nathan First UConn.
And Jeff.
Jeff Berry, Office of Higher Education.
And Megan, if I could just have you introduce yourself also.
Megan Villanova, Higher Ed Clerk.
Great. Thank you all. So again, Happy New Year. I want to start off just by saying that I want to thank Kelvin Roldan, co-chair, for his incredible work and effort throughout this process, but in particular in terms of pulling this report together and making it such a compelling piece. So Kelvin, thank you and bravo to you for all the great work. I want to thank everybody on this group and on this task force because we started out in September. We've met a number of times. We've had our work group. Everybody has been so diligent and committed in terms of being an active part of this task force. And that is not always the case. But you all really have stepped up, and you have offered so many good insights, so many good suggestions, so much information that has fully informed the thinking that has gone into the report and the report itself. So I really just full-heartedly want to thank all of you for being such an important and active, committed part of this work. I also want to thank some of the people who are outside of this group, in particular Dan at OFA and others who have also put a great deal of time and help into providing the research and data that underpins now a lot of this work and a lot of the recommendations in the report. So I want to fully thank them also for their help. I just want to say, and then we'll turn it over to you in just a second, Kelvin, but I also just want to say, I hope everybody has gotten the report. We sent it out this morning. We had hoped to send it out earlier, but there was still some fine tuning and work to be done, and we didn't want to send out a partial document. So I'm sorry that it came to you as late as this morning. I hope you've had time to look at it and review it, even though I know it's pretty comprehensive and it might be a lot to take in on the first reading. But I just want to say, I think we have now created a compelling and very strong set of recommendations and report to the legislature, to the state of Connecticut, that in my mind becomes just a clear imperative in terms of what they need to do and how this needs to be put into place. Last thing I want to say, we also built into this report a statement, or hopefully a mechanism, that will include follow-up, that will include a monitoring process to not just deliver the report and say, good luck, I hope this works out, but to continue to have a mechanism for that follow-up and for that monitoring of progress, and continue to be available to help with that progress. And whether that's, this task force, or whether that's part of the task force or other piece, that just felt really important to us, so that this really important and good work comes to fruition, and that we can be part of seeing that happen. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Kelvin, let me turn it over to you to share any remarks you want to share, and maybe get us into the report.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. For those of you that celebrate, happy Three Kings Day. That was yesterday. My kids were very excited to put grass under the bed for the camels. That's the typical activity now. Listen, thank you so much. This has been a great deal of work, and I want to just echo Richard's remarks in terms of thanking a lot of people who actually put quite a bit of work into this, particularly our friends over at the Office of Fiscal Analysis and the Office of Legislative Research, which began the work with us early on. I also want to thank CCAC and Jennifer Witness, who provided a great deal of the information that we needed in order to have a complete view, not just from the public entities, but also from the private entities. The report remains still in draft form, and there is a reason for that, right? Like, we want you all to have the opportunity to actually review and provide some direct feedback. And that can come in any which way, shape, or form you want. It can be a note to me via email. It can be annotations on the report itself, or if you so prefer, because there is quite a significant financial element to this and want to get a little bit more granular understanding behind some of the numbers, I'm happy to, Richard and I will be happy to make ourselves available to that end, since there is a significant financial component to this. The report as it currently is in draft form from the last time, you have seen significant portions of this already, right? So you have already viewed the major elements of the findings as well as the core set of recommendations, those haven't changed much. What you can now see in greater detail is the items associated with the specific recommendations around existing and expanded promise programs. Those have been fleshed out by Richard and myself, as well as the grant recommendations, which you have seen the core of this, but now you can also see the financial analysis itself and the recommendations. And just as a matter of framing, for your awareness in terms of how we actually arrive at the type of analysis that you are seeing and have access to. We looked at the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data, IPEDS, system maintained by the National Center for Education and Statistics as a mean to arrive to an apples-to-apples comparison of the numbers. And then we also relied on data and information from the National Association of State Student Grant Aid Programs, which conducts an annual survey of contributions that states are making. And with a correlation and a connection and analysis between those two elements, that's how we were able to arrive at a couple of things. We were able to, if you look at the report on page 21, we were able, through the amazing work, again, can't say enough about the folks over IOFA, particularly Dan, who worked tirelessly to create this, as well as our friends at CCIC, where now you can actually see on that page broken down by income bands. And these income bands, you might recall that we always wanted to align in that fashion so that we could understand better the cross-spectrum impact from a household income perspective. Those income bands come directly from the IPED system. So it's not something that we created, it's something that is already in existence, but we were able to then pull all of the data, compile it in a single location, and then get deep into the number of students enrolled, and then understand what the net price by income is after financial aid has been maximized. That turns out to be the amount that families pay on an average basis based on those income bands. That was a mouthful. Any questions associated with what I just framed as what you are looking at on page 21? Great. So then what we did then, we acknowledged that, like all data, right, no data is perfect, and there are data limitations. For example, the income bands only get to $110,000 household income, and obviously the distribution can be far greater than that. Also, there are limitations in terms of how the data is collected. I mean, obviously, there would be differences in disaggregation of the data by key student characteristics. So we called out some of those things as future work that would be required and needs to be done. Then what we did was we looked at the national average let me just make sure that I'm looking at the right document here, of estimated undergraduate state grant dollars, and where Connecticut, on a competitive basis, is on the spectrum. So you can see, hopefully you can see this chart, is that the national average is somewhere around the $1,283 range. And Connecticut is at the pretty much bottom of that, somewhere around $245 in terms of its contribution, which places us among the bottom of states as compared to other states in its contribution. And so what we said was, well, how do we think about making Connecticut more competitive and address many of the findings that we have all discussed and gone over for a number of months now. And that's how we arrived at a figure that gets us to Connecticut essentially getting to the national average. And so in order for Connecticut to get to the national average, taking into account that the Roberta Willis scholarship, as you know, is approximately $41 million on an annualized basis that is allocated, then the difference would be that Connecticut would need to spend an additional $124 million in order to get to that national average. Combine the two is about $165 million or so that Connecticut would need to allocate in order to make the state essentially competitive as it compares itself with peer states in the region and across the country. I'll pause there. Again, that was kind of a mouthful. So any questions associated with that? And obviously you can see this in the report itself, and hopefully the report is draft report, I should say, it is clear enough that it comes out in your direction. Richard, I'm going to look to you to see if you want to add a little bit more
I'll
context.
just say again, just as a reminder, that 165 million would be the amount required to cover 4 classes of students. So it's not
Correct.
just one class, that's for 4 classes of students.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. It's not. It annualizes after a period of upside implementation, but it's compounded on a yearly basis from one class to the next. Right? You got to cover each class, and so the figure would be 165 million for the 4 years. In other words,
so
in 4 years from now,
in the first year it might be 40 million, the second year
correct,
80 million, and so on. Just so everybody understands that. And the other thing, right. I just want to highlight that this is based on net price of attendance, right? This is all based on net price of attendance.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So and yes, and those are great clarifying points, Richard. Thank you. Right. We're not saying, although it would be wonderful if we could say that the state is going to spend $165 million a year on a compounded basis going forward, but that's not what we're saying here. It's really that figure of an additional $124 million to cover 4 years of students.
And let me just make one other point you touched on, Kelvin, but I just want to say this again. So even though this work goes up to that $110,000 family income figure as sort of the cap, that's because the data only took us that far. It is possible that we would say, and that state might want to say, what would it cost to cover everybody in the state, regardless of their income? So to go to a much higher level of income, and that even people at those highest levels would receive some benefit from this. Kelvin and I felt like let's leave that to the state to think about, but we certainly think that would be a worthwhile consideration, as opposed to the cap being at 110. But for the sake of this work, the cap had to be at 110,000 family income.
That's right. And so thank you, Richard. What you will see then on page 23, obviously there's lots of ways that this can then be, parceled out, right? Like how do you then go taking in consideration the income bands? What would then be the distribution across those income bands? And so we have what we call illustrations of how that would work, which is what you are seeing at the bottom of page 23 in draft form. And here you have 3 illustrations of that, which obviously encompass different policy positions. The first illustration of this is pretty much across the board. We wanted to say, well, what would it look like if you just did it across the board? And then we said, what would it look like if you then start making some decisions around income distribution on the upper end or the lower end of 0 to 30, and what would it mean across in the upper end of 110? And then lastly, being a more heavily weighted in the upper end for the 0 to 30, and then what it would mean for that. And you will also note that we're making an assumption that the private institutions would be at 50% off that upper public contribution. And then what you can see in the following page is an actual narrative illustration of how that breaks down in actual dollars so that you don't have to do the guessing game. again, but these figures can easily change based on how you distribute the dollars, but it gives you a bit of a good sense of what would be the contribution after maximizing financial aid dollars. I'll pause there. Lots of information. We'll take feedback, questions, suggestions, at a very high level. And Richard, did I miss anything in that framing?
No, after this, I'd like to take us back to the start of the report and just walk through it. Because again, it's a lot. And again, just as a reminder that this is the state success grant portion, but the overarching report is the ecosystem of Connecticut Promise. So, but just any thoughts, questions that you have about this particular section?
It's not specifically about this section. So at the end of the report, or at the end, it talks about 174 million. So is the 160 the scholarship component and the additional, any kind of administrative costs or other? I haven't read it completely in detail, but that was the number that I had in my head, that 174.
Where do you see that? Where do you see that number, Patricia?
I thought it was at the end of it was somewhere in the report. Maybe I misread it.
I'll just say that in addition to this funding for the Connecticut statewide success grant program, there's also requests in this report of somewhere between 3.75 and 4.5 million a year for existing Promise programs. So that is an additional.
I think that's how we got to 174.
That is additional support.
Okay.
And then we're also requesting that the state allocate funds. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly the number, but for an entity to help work with communities about expanding or starting new projects. So that's an additional allocation. I don't think it gets to 174 million, but it probably gets close to 170 million.
That's right, Richard. I think we had made a staffing assumption of 700, but I think we made a tactical decision in terms of how we laid it out and focus on the functions rather than the cost and the staffing, so that it would be there would be a process in terms of how to think about how would that be allocated? Could it sit in the office, in the imagined Office of Post-Secondary Success, for example? So there are some decisions to be made here subsequently. So I can go back. Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
Would it help you all to go through the report and give you all a chance just to pause at various points in here with any questions, thoughts you have? Would that be helpful?
I just had a couple high level, because I did read through most of the report.
Yep.
One, and I shared this with Kelvin, is that in terms of nomenclature, instead of calling it the College Promise, because there is a National College Promise nonprofit that's associated with mostly community colleges, and we might want to call it something else to not have that confusion that this is part of that College Promise, particularly since we're focused on four-year higher ed institutions. So looking at something else, Connecticut Promise, I'm not really sure, but College Promise is kind of already taken, and it would create some confusion. And then the other, as we go back to the beginning of the report, is I'm just thinking, I have a lot of, I've interacted with a lot of college presidents, and hopefully this is not too political, but the question always comes up with, why can't we just have more funding for higher ed? So what is the strategy around why this is maybe a step towards starting to fully fund, or at least recover the funding that has been cut through, I don't know, at least 14 years, all the time that I've been here. But what is that overarching sort of political strategy that's going to move our legislature to maybe seeing this as a first step towards having more money for higher ed and truly supporting the higher ed community?
think my answer to that, my oversimplified answer to that, Patricia, is that this is student-centric as opposed to institution-centric. Okay, and I think the legislature sees much of their support for higher education to be institution-oriented, and this is student-oriented. This is more targeted. It is grounded in the success that we've seen in existing Promise programs in Connecticut, their impact on workforce, their impact on talent retention, their impact on equity and accessibility. So it's grounded in the proven success of existing Promise programs. It's also grounded in what we see in terms of Connecticut to national averages around financial aid for students. But I think the real anchor here is that this is student driven and student targeted versus institutionally driven. That'd be my
great. I didn't necessarily pick that up, so I think we need to emphasize it because that does strike as something that sort of really distinguishes, but I would say that's probably universal across Promise movements, right? The Promise movement. And then the other is that it is kind of a community, it's student focused, but it's also taking the communities that bring these students forward and where most of these students will enter the workforce. So it's sort of, I don't know if you would call it a public-private partnership, but it's a government or something. I don't know what that would be, but it's, that partnership is really critical to the sort of secret sauce of these Promise programs.
I think very much it's a partnership, and I wouldn't shy away from that word or that description at all. It is very much a partnership, and it is very much not only, as I said, student, but also community focused, right? Specific targeted community focused. Yep.
Does it work to Can you all hear me?
Hear you now. Yeah.
Sorry. Does it work to go? I had a few things that I can send that are like missing word or things like that, but I do have some things just that I thought were worth discussing about whether they should be included or not.
Please, Siobhan. Yep.
Things. So I don't know if we go somewhat in order, and if folks had stuff at certain areas they could add in, or we could talk about them, whatever.
Go with your points, Siobhan.
Yeah, I would say that we don't want to do wordsmithing here, but something that could influence the overall policy position or direction is definitely a welcome conversation.
Okay, so just on the very beginning on page 5, when you talk about partnerships, I do think that corporate should be in there. So we talked about government agencies, philanthropic partners, but I do think to Patricia's point, we definitely have corporate partnerships that that should be included in there, especially as we're talking about a business related.
I'll just say, Siobhan, we do mention corporate and business partnerships as a key part of the Promise model in other points.
Right.
I think, yeah, we understand it should be up front also. Yeah.
When we talk about the ecosystem.
I noted it and I added it already.
Great. And then the other question is, I'm going through things that are not on page, I'll skip over minor things, but on page 12, I do think that's a conceptual difference when you talk about residency criteria and then you go straight to talking about out of state, in state. That's not how we define residency criteria. So it's at the
Right. Yeah, I found that confusing. What I think distinguishes, we probably have the original promise model of residency where the benefit increases the longer you've been in the district. And really, it looks like the other promise programs is just the 4 years of high school. So we're kind of an outlier, really, because and that's not explained, and I don't think it frankly needs to be explained, but I don't think it needs to be included.
Yeah, it's just at the bottom of page 12, you say residency criteria differ. For instance, Hartford Promise allows students to attend any accredited college nationwide. Like, that's important, but that's not the residency criteria.
Right.
So if you can, so that's a very granular detailed. If you can, I would ask that just send me a note and I will reflect it accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what we're trying to reflect here is the opportunity for customization.
Yeah.
Within the model. Yeah.
Right.
That's fine. In general, I wondered about what this group thought about continuing to include Bridgeport in everything without maybe, I know it was in there at one point as an asterisk at the bottom that it had just launched, but I feel like we don't know anything yet about Bridgeport except the premise and that it's getting started. So maybe just parentheses, just launching every time Bridgeport is mentioned might be concept.
We do make so I think what you're raising is that we should make it a little more central, but we do have a footnote associated with that, whereby we talk a little bit about what both Waterbury and Bridgeport as the newer programs, with Waterbury being in its 5th year of operation, while Bridgeport was just launched in the fall of 2025. So we're making a little bit of a certain distinction there, but I hear the note.
I think we should include Bridgeport. They've launched, and
yeah,
they don't have anything to report, but they've launched. So technically, we do have 4 promise programs. I think that's important, particularly as we're going to the state legislature to say, hey.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm to me, saying just launched or something consistently. But you brought up the other concern I have. Waterbury may not have graduation data, but they've funded a lot of students and invested in a lot over 4 years. And I do think, like, was there a reason there's not even a paragraph about Waterbury and like total they should be counted in total scholars served currently?
They are included in total scholars served. They're not included in that college completion data, but you're right, Savon. We could easily do a paragraph of Waterbury's good work to date.
Yeah, to be clear, there's no reason whatsoever. So it can easily be a paragraph can definitely be added. And like Richard says, Waterbury's numbers are included in all the numbers, but for the ones that they don't have numbers on.
Are they included in the annual class size per year? Because it's been increasing every year.
I think it is included. I think it is included in that annual class size, and that annual class size are sort of year averages over years, because we can't do the actual class size because they do change. And Kalonda, do you think you could send us just a brief paragraph that would be a description in terms of Waterbury's progress to date that we could plug in there? Would you mind doing that?
Yep.
That'd be great.
And
what's my deadline for that?
Yes,
tomorrow.
Well, we've asked for a deadline for this final report is January 16th, which is the end of next week.
Okay.
So anytime in the next couple of days.
Perfect.
Just a paragraph, similar to what you see there for the other program.
Okay.
And that my last just something I thought maybe should be included is on page 14 with best practices in designing the state programs. What's not in here is partnership with higher ed already success programs. And that's been key. Like, that's how New Haven says they have their students go to those programs. We partner with them. So it might be good. I'm sure Mona or Nathan could write a short um, part of that, but I do think that that is an important inclusion.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
And wordsmithing, I'll send to you separate, Kelvin. Minor things. Thank you.
Sounds
Okay.
great. Thank you, Sivan.
Other comments at this point about any parts of the report? And I'm certainly interested, Mona, Nathan,
Yep.
Catherine, your reactions as
I'm still skimming here, and the one question that stands out, and it could be that I just haven't picked up on that detail yet, but there's a suggested grant or support for current promise programs per student. And then it's also suggested that there are, I think, $124 million investment in financial aid and the ways that we can distribute it along the lines of what you discussed. Does $124 million, is that the price tag across the entirety of the proposal? Or is
no,
that
that's just for the
okay?
the Connecticut State grant portion of it. It does not
Okay.
include the existing promise support. That would be in addition to.
Okay, got it. And maybe it's in there and I just haven't picked up on it yet, but an overall investment table of some kind. Like
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think that we did spell it out in terms of here's the total. I think
Yep.
that'd be a really good addition, Nathan.
Okay. Yeah, that was the main thing that jumped up for me so far.
The other thing that I would add to that is you do have it broken out a little bit between public and private. What that would amount to. Well, there are a couple of things. One is, really backing into where are the majority of the students. So it's really going to the focus on the students and what are we trying to capture. So if we're trying to capture, well, one, we're making a moral, case for we should be supporting our citizenry here and our future in investing. But the other is what is the proportionate breakout of, let's say, it could be by income bands, under 60, where are the students and who are these students? What's the quantity of these students? But overall, like the student population. Is that making any sense?
To take this document, which details it by college and university, you're saying to then give a total figure as to
for Connecticut, because that's who this would benefit, right? So we're really trying to compete for our students to stay in state to attend our public and private colleges, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So for instance, when you look at, let's say, if you're looking at upper middle class families, I bet you upper middle class families are going out of state at a much more higher rate than those who are under 60. So, because it's all going to come down to funding. How much will the legislature or the governor be able, there's competition for these dollars. So, as folks analyze and say, well, maybe we can't do 160, but we can do this. I think we need to just have that detail in there in terms of where do we want to put our investment and which group of students. Hopefully it's all of them, but reality is it probably isn't going to be all of them.
So go ahead, Richard.
Sorry, Kelvin, please. No, please, Kelvin.
Well, so the table accounts for students in Connecticut and across the income bands. There's the manner in which we structured it was to create a set of illustrations in terms of how to think about it in the allocation process and the decision-making process. Number one, it was guidance that we received, to provide a series of scenarios in how we structure it so that it would provide for options in the process, number one. Number two, OFA conducted the analysis, and therefore OFA has all of this information and can parcel it out in any which way the legislature chooses once they get into the conversation of how to think about this more broadly. But what I'm potentially hearing, am I hearing potentially that you would perhaps like a table that includes the overall student population as well, so that we know what the percentages are in overall student population? Or
By income band?
By income bands and, well, probably the ones who are attending, by income bands and who's going out, because that's one of the logic points that you really focus on. What I'm saying, I know I
Yeah.
see it, I don't know about Savon and Kalanda. We see folks who are in the higher income band having more choice because they do have more choice. They have more finances. They have, equity loans. They have this. They have grandparents that have left the money and things like that. So, for our students who are more 60, under 30, or even in that true middle class spot of 60 to 100, we see that the promise has made a huge difference in selecting and affordability in state. We've seen that. So that's what I'm saying. When it does, as folks are talking about it in the state legislature and they're looking, it would be important to know,
You make a really good point, Patricia, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to push this up to higher income. And frankly, as I said before, we would like to push this up beyond that 110,000, exactly for the reason that you're highlighting.
Right. Let me give that some thought. I mean, the nature of the collecting the data and having the data and then analyzing and cutting the data to then reflect the out of state. I'm not sure how much of a lift that would be. I mean, we know that we are an exporter, and that has been documented that we are an exporter of students. Let me be mindful of the staff time and capacity to see how much deeper we can go into the numbers.
I wonder if one way to look, I'm not sure this could work, but we do a lot of analysis of the student clearinghouse, and the student clearinghouse doesn't have everyone, but it certainly has, if they're at these institutions. So, we see that folks who apply for our promise, but let's say they go out of state. We're not talking about the historical Black colleges. We can track them and see who's graduating and how many folks are in. So that could be another way of doing it, just as a strategy for trying to find out what that number is.
Got it. Understood.
Please, any and all other comments? Again, I'm going to point to you, Mona, you, Catherine, from a college, university perspective. Any reactions, comments, suggestions as you go through the report?
I haven't fully read everything yet, so need a little time to more, fully digest it.
Understood.
Yeah,
And Mona, I'm sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
I was just going to say the same. I haven't gotten through the whole thing. I've been actually reading it as we've been talking. So I'm sure I may have some comments, but I haven't quite gotten through it all yet.
Great.
And as I said, for those of you that are interested, I'm happy to get on a call with you and do a little bit more of a granular dig into the financials, because it is complex.
I was just going to say, Kelvin, Mona, Nathan, Catherine, if you all feel it would be helpful to have a little smaller group conversation in terms of your reactions to the report. And I was going to say the same thing, Savon, Kalanda, Patricia, if you think it would be worthwhile to have a smaller group conversation, in particular about what this reflects in terms of the existing promise programs. I mean, you all clearly are fully invested in that. I'd love to maybe have a follow-up conversation to make sure that this does in fact reflect the very best thinking and that you are comfortable with it. So if either or both of those things would be helpful, I'm sure Kelvin and I are happy to be available for that.
I also wanted to add that I did not see the email come through, so I haven't had a chance to read it. And I've been trying to pay attention to this meeting, so I haven't been trying to flip through it at all. So hopefully I'll be able to take a look and provide any feedback that's relative to anything that's pertinent to me or my experience.
That's great, Jeff.
And that's great, Jeff. And thank you for sharing the information that you shared you'll hopefully note that we reflected your points in the report as well.
You're welcome.
Anything else that you all want to raise or question or suggest? If not, we'll be able to wrap up in just a minute. But I hope that as you look at this, maybe some of you for the first time, and others as you read through it, maybe a second and third time, that you feel that it is a strong case that's being made, that you feel it's a compelling case that's being made about the ecosystem, about our existing programs, about the potential for expansion, about a statewide success grant program. I hope you all feel we've really tried to make this a clear, compelling case. And to your point, Patricia, it's both a moral imperative, it's an economic imperative. It really is an imperative on a lot of levels. And we've tried to a talent retention imperative. So we've tried to make those cases clearly, but we've also tried to back it up, as Kelvin has shared, with a lot of data and a lot of research and a lot of grounding, and frankly, experience and existing success. So I hope you all feel that as you go through it. Please share if you got some wordsmithing points, please share those. If you've got some bigger points that you want us to address or consider, please share those things. If you want to have these smaller conversations, subgroup conversations, if you think that'd be helpful, happy to be part of that. Again, you all have been great.
What I'd like to say, thank you, Kelvin and Richard, because now we have a framing document. I mean, in absence, because the reality is there is nothing on the table. Every year funding is cut. So now this is a real document with possibility and hopes that can really start the conversation with the folks who are critically responsible for investing in our young folks in this state. And if we do nothing, we will continue to go this way when we really want to go that way. So this is I think a Herculean first step, but I think it's one that, many folks will be able to, gnaw on, and we can perhaps change and start some momentum in the other direction, which is investing in our promise, the promise of our young people. So thank you both for your leadership.
I echo.
Yeah.
Yeah, entirely. Can I
Nathan,
just add one new thought though, which I don't know, I don't think I've heard. And I'll look through the whole report and see if we have anything there and whether or not we can enhance it or add something new, and send that back to you. But it's the ROI of it and the economic impact of it. If there's any way for us to demonstrate that, I think it really helps to reinforce the case here. So we're asking for money. In return, the state of Connecticut is going to see fill in the blank thing.
That's that career component, really, in terms of what it means around the millions, the billions of dollars that will be here in tax revenue and other soft.
Yeah, Nathan, Patricia, if you have something of a model in terms of how to think about that, send it my way, and definitely I agree with you. It would be helpful to have.
And I want to just say, if Jeff or Dan, if you have anything that could help us make that, I think it's a really important point in terms of the message here, Nathan. But if any of you have anything that could help us to use that we could use to make that case, that'd be great.
And if I can just first of all, thank you. No pride of authorship by any means. Please do feel free to, this is how we improve the message and the work. Please do feel free to send your notes my way, and I'll will do my best to reflect your thoughts here. The one thing though I will ask though is we promised we would have this document in some form by a certain date. So if it's possible to get those to me by COB on Friday, it will give me the opportunity to reflect, read, do again, send it to you for and so on and so forth, so that we have a good iterative process in place to get to the final product.
I'll note we're scheduling a meeting with Senator Looney sometime in the next 10 days or so. The co-chairs of the Higher Ed Committee, Derek Slapp and Greg Haddad, have been involved throughout this process. We've kept them updated. They're very excited, encouraged. I think we mentioned before that we had a meeting with Matt Ritter and his team prior to the holidays, and they were also very encouraging and positive with what we had at that point. So we have tried to keep people involved in this process who will be making decisions.
Hey, Richard and Kelvin, I have a question. I know you talked about next steps of like being able to support and continue having conversations after this report is submitted. Would there be opportunity for existing Promise programs to also advocate and support the efforts? I know at one point we talked about having a statewide Promise Day and have scholars up at the Capitol, et cetera. So I just wanted to bring that back to the table as we move forward.
Really good points. I'm going to say I hope so on all those fronts.
Yeah, typically speaking, if I can add just briefly, is what typically speaking in, I think early on we learned that these task forces happen, but it is often the case that they're not actually empaneled and produce a document. So we are, we're certainly all high achievers in that regard as pertains to this element. But usually what would happen is from a process perspective, we would submit it to the corresponding body, which in this case is the Higher Ed Committee and the General Assembly. And they might consider at that point to actually hold a hearing on it, which would, there's lots of processes internally that would amount to that. And I understand that there is the major possibility of that.
Awesome.
Other comments before we wrap up? Anybody wants to heap praise on the chairs here? I mean, we're open to that too.
We tried to. Nathan and I and Kalanda were all on the same, echoing every word that Patricia said. So
yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. All right, Kelvin, you have anything else before we go?
No, other than to say again, please look forward to your feedback. I really appreciated the opportunity to work with all of you. And, as it is the case with this type of work, the report is usually only the beginning. And so let's hope that that is true here and that, we're all going to be attached to the hip for quite some time as we try to advocate and make this work on behalf of Connecticut children and families. It's been certainly a lifelong work for me at this point in time, and for many of you and all of you as well. So I look forward to the continued journey with you.
Same here. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
And obviously, we will send you the final document next week. Share all of your continued input with us, and onward we go, right? Onward.
Yes. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.